Hello there, and welcome to another episode of Q&A with myself. I'm Clément Young, and I'm your host. Today's question is, am I dating a narcissist? It's a really good question. I was going to say superb there. And what we need to do first is we need to establish what a narcissist is in the truest, most extreme sense, so that we can kind of work our way backwards and deconstruct that and figure out what that means exactly. So, narcissistic personality disorder in its truest sense is one of several types of personality disorders. It's a mental health condition in which people have an inflated sense of their own importance, a deep need for excessive attention and admiration, troubled relationships, and a lack of empathy for others. So if any of those things, kind of ring a bell for you, then carry on. Let's split the condition into 7 traits. The first trait is grandiosity. So this is an exaggerated sense of self-importance. It's a feeling of superiority to other people, expecting special treatment, and fantasies of brilliance, power, and unlimited success. So that's I think that's probably the most popular way to figure out whether someone's got narcissistic tendencies, is to really just kind of look at how they see themselves. And usually it's very inflated and over the top. Number 2, excessive need for admiration. So they need to be the center of attention. They monopolize conversations. They're always speaking over other people. They're always not listening and just waiting for their next turn. And when they're ignored, they feel hurt, mistreated, or enraged. So that's excessive need for admiration. Number 3, superficial or exploitative relationships. So the relationships they have are based on superficial attributes, what someone has, what they look like. And then they're also valued, so the people that they spend time with, have relationships with, date, are only valued insofar as they're useful or beneficial to that person's ego or that person's goals. So they're users, they're real users, and you can kind of feel it, but they're also good manipulators. So sometimes you kind of believe them. So that's superficial and exploitative relationships. Number 4 is a lack of empathy. And this is when someone has severely limited or complete inability to care about others or even loved ones. You can start to see how these are joining up and they complement one another. So having one or more of these traits is quite powerful and quite damaging to your development as a human in society and your ability to kind of create the relationships that are going to give you the most fulfillment and the most growth from your life journey. Number 5 is identity disturbance. This is when someone has a highly rigid, fragile sense of themselves. It's when their stability depends on maintaining that feeling of exceptionality. It's when they are easily threatened and when they deny realities that are proposed to them that challenge that grandiosity. Okay, so let me explain. Yes, very fragile, very rigid sense of self. And that means that they, narcissistic people or people with narcissistic tendencies rather, will do everything to avoid being in the presence of someone who they know can challenge them, who they know can hurt their feelings, because the thing is, they don't want to believe that there's anything wrong. They don't believe there's anything wrong. And so they'll fight nail, tooth, claw, to get away from anything that threatens their sense of their ego. And at times, I've also felt that way. I say this quite a few times in the podcast that I had, that I spent quite a long time in Southeast Asia, where life is incredibly easy for a Westerner, for someone who earns in a different currency, for someone who has Caucasian blood. And I did do that for around 5 or more years, and it damaged me quite deeply because I had created this bubble where I was escaping any kind of criticism, any kind of challenge to how I wanted to live my life. And so therefore, I only got more and more unstable and more rigid and sensitive to that kind of thing as time went on. Luckily, I was able to pull it back, and I'll talk about rehabilitation at the end of this. Number 6 is a difficulty with attachment and dependency. So this is when people rely on their subjective reality to determine their success. They can't be objective. They don't look at things objectively. They're not unbiased. They need to base things on how they feel in the moment rather than maybe what other people think and other sets of data that come from external. So it's always about them. They avoid intimacy. Like I said, they avoid that kind of connection because they don't want to be challenged, and they also don't want to let anyone know what's really going on under the hood. I would expect they don't actually even want to know it themselves, which is why they stay away from it. And they can never truly be vulnerable, only in a manipulative sense. So if you ever think, oh gosh, they really opened up to me that day, I mean, it could really just be a very good lie or a very good manipulation of you. So watch out for that. And lastly, number 7, chronic feelings of emptiness and boredom. And this is when, in the absence of attention and praise, there's just this huge feeling of emptiness or depression or restlessness or boredom because they constantly need that gratification from someone else's validation, someone else's, good words, compliments, and just admiration. So you can see how when these are all, when they're stacked on top of each other, they create a monster of a person. And if you're recognizing more or all of these points in your partner, I would say yes, you are in a relationship with a narcissist. But can you do anything about it? So let's talk about that for a moment. Now, if you didn't score high, like if you've got maybe 1 or 2 traits, so the less traits you have, or the less traits you can be very confident to identify, the more chance you have of rehabilitation, or that person has of rehabilitation. And rehabilitation for things like this is very difficult because it's like an inherent belief that they are better than anyone else. It's an inherent belief that they deserve things that maybe they don't deserve or they haven't earned. And it's an inherent belief that they cannot give any kind of leeway or admission, right? They can't admit that there's something wrong. So the more traits that you have, the harder it is to get that admission. So therefore, it makes it even more challenging. What I would suggest is you have a third-party therapy session, you have an intervention even, but you have some way to break through that bubble, because it is a bubble that they've created around themselves. And the only way to get through to a narcissist is to present them with the facts, present them with something that's objectively true, that is very difficult to deny. And the more you do that, the more likely they are to kind of wake up and recognize, you know what? Maybe there's something true about this. Whether or not you hurt their feelings, well, that's another question. I think that it's very likely you're going to hurt their feelings. It's very likely you're going to get into some kind of dispute about this because, like I said, narcissists will fight tooth and claw to maintain their reality. So it is tricky, but with the right strategy, and the right timing, I think that there's a good chance that you can open up, you can get them to open up, and you can somehow find a way forward, whether it's with therapy, whether it's with time and space, whether it's with trying a new self-help, self-development, whether it's building a community that's going to support and give you the kind of encouragement and tough love that they need, because they do need tough love to get through this, or a combination of any of those things that I just said. So really, really good luck with this. I really do hope that you manage to get through to them. And if this is you, if you can be objective enough to look at this list and say, do I have any of those traits? And by the way, we all have some of these traits. I'm gonna, give you the answer there. We have these traits, but they vary in intensity and we vary between them. So maybe we'll have some and maybe we won't have the others. But we can express narcissistic tendencies. I've just explained that I used to, and I worked on it, and it wasn't easy, and I was able to break free from, I would say, most of it. And now, I think I'm a much better person because of it. So if you can spot any traits here, work on them, and you will really thank yourself, because your life will change so much more for the better. I promise you that's what's going to happen. So thanks for listening. I hope this has been helpful, and I hope you tune into the next one. Take care. Bye-bye.